Hello and welcome back to the Excurse. And today I am joined by James Transmissions from the Void, a website that I think has been around pretty much as long as I have doing stuff online. I think back in the day it was like me and you, pretty much.
Yeah, I think so, mate, yeah.
So 2010 you started, I think, according to your website there.
Yeah, maybe end of 2009, begin 2010. One of the classic things, we started as a blog spot or a blogger, I think it was called back in the day, owned by Google. And then we thought after a couple of months, oh, this is good fun. So we kind of evolved into a fully fledged website, 12 years ago. And then said, and as I said recently on the website, due to various technical issues and the removal of Flash, which was what our website was based on.
Flash was a huge one, man. Losing Flash, caused havoc for the internet. Like so many pages, so many of those amazing animations that people did in Flash as well. I just thought, oh man, I know you can convert them, but I miss all of those old Flash animation sites and stuff, you know.
Pre-YouTube days, the pre-YouTube days was also like a Black Sheep or something it was called, all that sort of stuff. A bit of a pain in the bum, really, but they've been talking about it for years, and it kind of on and on. I think it was probably, I think they were talking about withdrawing Flash maybe 4 or 5 years ago, and then it kind of on, and I just ignored it. Nothing happened. And
it'll never happen.
Yeah, it'll never happen. Think about the millions of websites that will just basically disappear into the internet ether. But push came to shove last year and said, you've got basically 3 months. So I salvaged all the text, all the pictures, all this maybe sort of, we did the One Soul podcast that we did back in the day, salvaged all that, and my original, still is my plan. What I'm going to do is going to make a sort of softback book of all in kind of a old kind of fanzine style kind of booklet of all the reviews and articles and retrospectives, and call that kind of Transmissions Act 1. And then I was kind of like, I was toying with the idea, shall I just leave it there and it'd be a nice part of a decade of my life? But, more thought about it, I just couldn't let go. So Transmissions has been reborn with a new shiny website. And I'm just in the process of transferring over some of the old content, some of the better written content, let's put it that way. So I think my writing style has come a long way in the last 10 years. So moving all that stuff over, some of the really interesting articles, the really interesting retrospectives, but some of it I'm just going to quite happily let go and disappear into the ether and just have it as a good memory, because some of it is said, and as I said, over the years, just as the way the sort of behind the scenes that they changed the template and the way they were kind of amending the kind of coding just led to some of the old articles just looking really kind of shabby. And I said the old platform wasn't fit for purpose. So it's kind of said, while initially I was annoyed that I was going to lose all that content, I think it's been a bit of a blessing in disguise, and it's given us a chance to kind of really be relaunched with a shiny website and sort of modern functionality, things like integrated forum and sort of comment boxes and
scaling
stuff
for mobile. Holy shit.
Yeah, exactly. Mate, that is, you joke, mate, but
no, I'm not. I from experience, I joke from experience.
And it was like kind of like you had to manually edit all that for mobile use. Like, man, can
basically
I be asked
create
to do that?
A second website just for mobile. It was an absolute pain in the ass
for the one friend that might look at it on the bus for 2 minutes on the way to work. But yeah, mate. But all this stuff, really kind of blew my mind. Really, it's like this has probably been commonplace for probably best part of 10 years. But
it's new to you, so
yes, so it's exciting times, mate. Exciting times.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I was gonna start talking about video games and stuff, but you brought up something that I really wanted to talk about in your talking about making this soft book, because you make tapes at the moment, and I love this idea. So tell people what you do, because you're taking classic video game soundtracks a lot of the time.
Yeah,
and you're transferring them to tape. You're making the artwork. You're making everything. Is it just for you? Can people buy the? I'm guessing people can't really buy them, or they can buy the templates maybe, or
Wow, interesting. I did it purely being a huge video game soundtrack fan. It's exploded over the last few years.
Oh yeah.
From vinyl, then to MIDI discs as well. I do, and tape. Something I thought was just really nerdy and cool.
I love it.
Mate. So yeah, we check out some links later to the stuff, mate. I do it personally for my own for the love of the scene and the music, and I do it for my own satisfaction. But mate, I get so many requests on Instagram and Facebook. Mate, can you do this? Can you do that? And I'm two things. One, it's really time consuming.
Oh, I can imagine.
To design it and dub the tapes, but also I'm a bit wary about the whole. Not that most people seem to give a toss at all, mate. Copyright thing. Like
I think they do once there's money, but you know, it'd be cool if you could you could like publish the artwork, you know, the format and stuff, so that people can make their own. That might be cool.
Yeah. Funny enough, you should say that. I got the idea for. I said the whole explosion in video game vinyl is obviously a big thing in the last few years, and that's led to tape. The thing that got me into it was, funny enough, my wife backed the Kickstarter for what's the spiritual follow up to Maniac Mansion? Can't think it was called now. But they
didn't know there was a spiritual successor to Maniac Mansion.
Yeah, mate. Mate, it's gonna annoy me. It will come to me in a minute.
Zach McCracken was the same people, but
dude, I can't think it was called. But anyway, so they did that, and
was this modern? A modern spiritual successor?
I
had no idea.
Oh mate, it's gonna feel really bad, but it will come to me in a minute. But anyway, part of the Kickstarter thing was like you got the music as a digital file, but you also got like the sort of J card sort of cassette inlay for like a sort of mock soundtrack on tape, and I was like, that's pretty cool. And the more I thought about it, I was like,
the more you thought about it,
I wish they did more. And then that just led to that, and me doing them, just doing all these tapes, mate. And it basically is, if I like the soundtrack, I do it. Like some of the costly things like Doom. I'm looking at them now. Doom, obviously, it's an absolute classic. Just things like really obscure.
You did Quake as well, didn't you?
Quake,
recently?
mate. Yeah, Quake.
One of my favorite soundtracks of all time. And Doom. Doom and Doom 2, fantastic soundtracks.
They are. Quake is particularly awesome, but obviously that was mired in copyright issues for years and years.
Well, I mean, he couldn't even get that released on vinyl for years, because that vinyl release was the most obscure. That was they announced that. I want to say they announced that like 2010 or something, and it just never happened.
No,
it finally came out like last year or something like that.
Yeah, it did, and it popped up on the website, and it's funny as well because
it was sold out by the time I even knew it was on sale.
Oh, mate, sad times, because I managed to get a copy, and funnily enough, they had there was supposed to be a booklet that was supposed to be in with the vinyl, and initially I thought but it ended up getting pulled for copyright issue, another wrangle between id and Bethesda, and really quite messy. It's a shame, but funnily enough, Trent Reznor put a comment on his website or on social media saying, oh, we made this really cool booklet for it, and it's a real shame that it couldn't come out. Wouldn't it be a shame if it got leaked online and then underneath was a link to the PDF? So that's pretty cool. It's just like insights from Romero and all that lot, and about the making of the game and the soundtrack. And it's a shame that it's weird. Like, was it 96 Quake come out, something like that? It's like, what's 25 years later, man? And even the idea of like trying to play the game, you have to inject music files into it for the original. Mate, it's a pain in the arse, isn't it?
Well, I've still got it. I've still got Doom and Doom 2 and Quake on big box if I really need to go back to the originals. What annoys me now actually is if you play Quake now through Steam, it's like you've got to wait through like loads of Bethesda logos, and you've got to connect to Bethesda online, and it's like, I'm playing Quake. Like, just stop, Bethesda. Just stop.
And this is where emulation comes into its own, isn't it? Because I play it, believe it or not, I play it on my Vita. I've got. Dude,
the Vita is like, people nowadays love their Switch, and that's cool. It's a real cool device. But man, people don't realize how good the PlayStation handhelds were for like emulation. They were amazing.
It was kind of a blessing and a curse, wasn't it? Because at the end of the day, it's kind of the piracy is what killed the PSP, but at the same time, it's the reason why it still lives on.
It's the reason why, if you want to buy a PSP, they're still really expensive online. Certain ones, I think it's the earlier model, or no, the later model, because they had a better screen, didn't they? Some of those really keep their price.
Well, it's like the Vita, mate. It's like, it's the whole big thing with Switch recently. Oh, the new OLED version. It's like, well, the Vita had that in 2012. Come on. I think the thing that was dead in the water with the Vita was because it didn't have twin triggers, mate. If it had twin triggers and they went for that whole touch back screen thing, it was just, oh, mate, that was a bad move. I think if they'd done the double triggers like the Switch, I think it would have had so much more fruitful existence, and I think it'd still be going now. It's a beautiful machine with a beautiful screen. Still
It's still
supported now,
great.
mate.
Yeah.
Yeah, still a brilliant machine. Mine still works, mate. It's got no problems. As I said, now there's a whole homebrew and emulation scene that's brought up. So I've got Half-Life and Quake and
Nice.
Doom and all those sort of games. Duke Nukem, all those classic first-person shooters from back in the day that run beautifully on it. As I said, it was a bit of a pain in the arse getting it running. The whole music, if you want the original experience with the music and everything like that, is again, you have to like sort of create files and inject WADs and all this kind of stuff. It's a bit of a pain in the arse, but definitely worth the time if you're a fan of those games. But that said, Quake got reissued last year, didn't it, for like £4 or something?
It did, yeah. And with they done, I must admit, from my bitching of Bethesda and whatnot, the newest release, the anniversary edition that they released, has got some really good single player levels that they've added. They're fantastic. So they're doing some good work, and a lot of these companies now are kind of turning to the modding scene to if they find good modders, they're like, create levels for us, or can we steal your levels and just put them in our old game, as a re-release, which is great, man.
They do the hard work, don't they? Do the legwork for them. You know what I mean? That's some of the stuff that seeing all the community creators is phenomenal, isn't it? Let's be fair.
Yeah, and then you got companies like Night Dive as well doing God's work. Bringing us Blood Fresh Supply, and I think they did the Duke Nukem one as well, didn't they? Did they do Megaton Edition? I'm not sure, but you've got these companies out there now that are more than willing to grab a retro game and say, hey, id or whoever, 3D Realms, if you let us, if you give us the license, Monolith, we'll go fix it for you and we can share the profit. And then the fans get it, because that's the great thing. I'm a big PC gamer, a big gamer in general, but big PC gamer back in the day. It's not a problem for classic consoles and stuff. You plug it in, off you go. As soon as you get to PC, it's like, well, what spec was the PC? And I've spent so many hours and hours over the years getting old PCs working on modern systems. So for me, if I can throw a couple of quid at GOG or someone like that and just be like, make it work for me, I'm happy. It's nice to see that these games are still available for people.
And there's a definite element of preservation there.
Oh, for sure.
That old argument of like, I'm pretty sure for all the people that shout about, oh, it's not piracy, it's preservation, I'm pretty sure they could use that as a smokescreen just to cover their own asses.
Well,
but I totally, I'm not saying everyone, but there is, think about, especially films. Funny enough, I only talking with a friend last night about VHS.
Yeah.
I saw a doc.
There's a lot of stuff that didn't make it from VHS to DVD.
They reckon between 5,000 and 6,000 films. Yeah, I imagine the quality of those movies isn't the best, but it's still a part of film history. And and that companies aren't willing, prepared to, or don't want to put the money into kind of whether digitally storing them or transferring to Blu-ray, DVD. Yeah. But you said, from terms of just a legacy perspective, a computer game's a classic one. Think of MAME, right? I'm a huge arcade fan, MAME fan. Think about MAME's got thousands of games in it. As someone at some point, someone has gone in and ROM grabbed that from that arcade board and stuff. Without someone doing that game would have been long gone. You know what I mean? Think about maybe some of the obscure arcade games that might only not the Donkey Kongs of the world, they're made in their millions, But
you've built a main cab, haven't you? That's another thing you've done.
Got me and digital pinball. Yeah, mate, awesome stuff. I was cleaning it the other day and I noticed written on the back of the date, it was made October 2012, so it's almost 10 years old. Still going strong, mate.
That's good to see. So, I remember seeing your project as you were making it. I was seeing the photos as you were posting them.
Mate, I love it. I absolutely love it. And MAME's fantastic. MAME is, I suppose, is the leading light when it comes to kind of when you talk about emulation. I think MAME's the big one. But yeah, there's so many out there, and I just love how these kind of said. For example, I'm looking at it now. My Wii's still under my TV, and that is hacked to death. And that's got like every Wii, GameCube game of note on it, a NES game, SNES game, and I didn't feel bad at all, mate. The amount of money I've spent dropped on Nintendo over the years, I do not feel bad at all about ripping some of the things.
I mean, I've got the benefit of having never thrown anything out, so I've got pretty much everything I used to play I've still got. But it's funny though, because emulation comes into, well, not necessarily emulation, but certainly ROMs come into it to an extent. I mean, I've got like hundreds of C64 games back there. But for listeners in America who mostly use disc for C64, over here it was all tape. And I will not risk playing tapes anymore because they're old. They're like 30 years old tapes. I'm not going to risk breaking the tape. So I just get the ROM. I've actually got a converter that converts an SD card into tricking the C64 into thinking that it's a tape. So you basically plug it into the C64 as you would your tape deck, and it's just a micro SD. It's great.
That is pretty cool.
Yeah, it's awesome. But it means your tapes don't get damaged, nothing gets damaged. You can just play away and not have to worry about it or stress that you're going to break the tape in your 30-year-old tape player, you know?
And to be honest, those tape players were pretty crappy. I can remember I had my...
It still works. The last time I tried it still works, but I don't want to risk it with anything too expensive, you know?
I was a huge Spectrum fan, so it's like you think, mate, you think the fanboy wars of today of the Xbox versus PS5 is, mate, nothing compared to the C64 Spectrum playground.
I liked both. I owned a C64, but I loved both. Is it? My favorite game on the Specky was. Is it Trash Man? I think it was called Trash Man. When you're the bin man, it's such a cool game.
There's so many games that are essentially 1,000 games with the same premise. It was just kind of whether it be you play a Trash Man or you play a Goblin or Father Christmas or a character from EastEnders. You know what I mean? There were some random games, mate. Or there was I can remember this is amazing.
There's a game of like Super Gran on the Spectrum in C64. Mate, you know, like everything you can imagine.
Because the thing is, people used to knock up in like 2 weeks in their bedroom. Yeah. Like even the classics like Manic Miner, Matt Smith made that in 4 weeks at 16 in his bedroom. Whereas I can remember having a game. I used to buy all the magazines, Zap and Crash. Remember all them?
I owned Zap. Yeah. Do you know that is one of my biggest regrets in terms of video games, consoles? I've kept them all, maintained them all over the years. I never kept magazines, and that's my biggest regret to this day, because I've looked them up. I'm like, oh, maybe I'll get some old Zap magazines. They're so expensive now.
Mate, I don't want to talk about it because purely I'm still a die-hard magazine reader, mate, and I'm quite happy to read a book on a Kindle, quite happy to read a comic on my tablet. But there's something about the formatting of magazines that doesn't lend themselves to like digital read. For me personally, it doesn't lend themselves, whether it be like double spread or pop out columns or boxes. It just doesn't flow on a digital format, I don't think. But mate, being a dad now and my son, obviously space is limited. Same as you, I've still got all my consoles, mate. I'll never throw them out. They're just boxed up. So all that stuff, all boxed, all my C64, N64 stuff, SNES, NES, all that's all boxed up.
I've got that actually right next to me here. I've got loads of consoles just off camera here. Not that anyone can see my camera right now. Yeah, well, they're in a shelf. They're not, you know.
Or the problem for me was I just finding the adapters to plug them into modern TVs, because like magazines, mate, the Matt CRTs I've binned over the years, and now I'm thinking, oh man, why don't I keep that? So I've got an old
CRT down here, and I've got one upstairs. But yeah, only cheap ones. If I could find a Trinitron for a reasonable price, I would jump on it. But yeah.
I had two at one point. I had a 14-inch and like a 20-inch, and they're just gone in a bin. You know what I mean? You just think of that. I kept the 14-inch Trinitron literally just to play light gun games.
That's what I mean. That's the one thing that they haven't. Well, they've done some work now. I think there are some systems that actually work to do the light gun thing. I don't know how well they work though. But yeah, light guns were always the one. You know.
Not too bad. They basically, because I've got one for my main cabinet. It's not too bad, because Point Blank is hands down my favorite arcade game of all time. My favorite game of all time. It's a shooter. So I
love Point Blank,
mate. Amazing.
I've never known someone say it's their favorite though, so that's great. Mate, it's great to hear someone say that.
It's phenomenal, mate.
Is.
I wish they did a line of Point Blank merch. I want a Don and Dan T-shirt, but I'm sure I'd get a Redbubble. I'm sure someone's done it.
Someone's done it. Yeah.
But essentially, it's the kind of Wiimote technology in a different housing, essentially. So just tracks so the only problem is when it works, it's brilliant.
Yeah.
But if it goes out, it's a bit like VR. Once the tracking goes a bit out, mate,
just have it. Yeah.
Yeah, and it just pisses you off. So but yeah, when it works, it's good. When it doesn't, it's a bit annoying, especially for aesthetic reasons. I've got the sensor behind the perspex of the cab as well. So it kind of looks a bit smarter. But of course, sometimes
get a bit of reflections
as well.
Yeah.
But mate. back to magazines. That's what we were talking about. Magazines. Sorry, mate.
No, that's all right. This is called the Excurse. Everyone apologizes for going off topic. There is no topic. It's just a chat, you know.
I for the last probably 10 or 12 years, I get a retro gamer every month, and I have hundreds of issues, mate, that I just binned. And when people go, mate, you could have got a couple of quid for them as like each or 5 quid. I'm like, you know, I've got so much stuff like that. Like, I've got 1,000 DVDs just piled up in storage that is like, I haven't watched for years. I probably never watched, but I can't bring myself to get rid of them. As that collection, I spent 15 years building that collection up, and it probably cost me what, 10 grand minimum. And but at the same time, it's like, should I just, if someone came up to me and said, I'll give you 1,500 quid, 2 grand for that whole lot, I'd probably let them have it. But the idea of selling them for like 20p on Magpie or 10p, I'd bollocks them, you know what I mean? I'd rather just give the whole lot. Ultimately, this is probably going to whole lot to a charity shop and just say, look, do what you want with them. If it makes you a few quid, that's happy days. I'd rather do that and give it some sponging charity. They'll give not charity, sorry, some sponging website. They'll probably give me 50 quid for the entire lot.
Yeah. So I'm getting the impression, because one of the first questions I was going to ask, and then we kind of went off on a tangent, was where did you start with video games? Like, what were your first consoles and what were your first games? I get the impression we're about the same age, and we've probably had a very similar journey. Just you started probably with a Spectrum, whereas I started with the C64. Yeah,
man. So funny enough,
we were on opposing sides of the playground.
Yeah. There was an awesome. There's some great Facebook groups, you know, when it comes to the old video games and forums and stuff. And just before Christmas, someone put up. Long story. I'll get to the point. Someone put up a picture of all the Domark old Spectrum games, Star Wars games, so the ports of the conversion of the old Vector games, you know, the Star Wars and Empire and stuff. And the memory came rushing back to me. So I reckon I started gaming about 86, 87. My brother's a few years older than me. He had a Spectrum, and I remember vividly. I think about it's Christmas 1987. I got given Star Wars, the arcade game on Spectrum, and you know what? The port is still very good.
A port of the arcade game. Wow.
Yeah, and it works really well.
I don't think I've ever played that on the Spectrum.
Mate, it's awesome. Check out some YouTube videos, mate, or down it. It plays really, really well.
Because I love that old arcade game. That arcade game's incredible.
It's aged really, really well as well. Like I played it. I went to Time Warp Arcade.
Graphics do not age.
No,
Vector
they look brilliant.
graphics just always look great.
Yeah. Look at the Vectrex. You know what I mean? I want one of those so much, but they go for
so expensive.
Like 500 quid.
I've looked. I've been very tempted, but I cannot justify that kind of money.
And apparently the controllers are really temperamental as well. So unless you're really handy with electronics, which I just wouldn't. I've always been able to solder, but I'm just not very good at it. So, for example, if I had one wire to connect to a speaker, I'm competent enough to do that. But if it's like intricate, like motherboard soldering, I think I'd just fry it immediately.
Yeah.
But anyway, So Star Wars. So 87, 88 was probably the first vivid memory I had of getting a game for Christmas. I can remember as well. It was in my stocking, and me and my brother put it in before my parents got up, and just great memories of playing that game before, obviously, inevitably going downstairs to see if the big man had been with a present. So, so yeah, mate, Spectrum for me, and then that led to the Mega Drive, and the rest is history. Yeah. The rest is history.
Yeah, mine was C64, then NES, then Mega Drive.
Oh man, so you really were the other team.
Now I'm every team. I've got pretty much every Nintendo and I've got every Sega console that they released in the West, because that's an easy one. They stopped producing anymore. But you know, in terms of Nintendo, I go up to the Wii U. I don't have a Switch or anything yet. But
mate,
in fact, I don't have any modern console. The only thing I've got a PC, which is pretty much what it is these days. But
now the big hitters are releasing all their games on the PC anyway. It doesn't really matter, does it? So,
we were opposing forces back in the day, from the sound of it.
Yeah. I always wanted a Nintendo, but I could because at the end of the day, it was always felt like at the time, because they had such a vice like grip
Oh
on the
yeah.
scene and the market. It always felt like Sega was always like the kind of poor man's Nintendo. Now in hindsight, that was never the case. They just offered different experiences. But that's why
Yeah.
something like I remember reading something like at one point they had like something like 97% of the market share or something Nintendo, and it was complete monopoly. And they basically used to say things like department stores, where they say, well, you can't have Super Mario 3 if you stock any
Oh yeah, yeah, they did. Yeah,
Sega
they were
content and stuff
ruthless.
like that. Mate,
Ruthless.
absolutely savage. But I could never afford them. Like the fact that I can vividly remember doing like simultaneous like 4 paper rounds just to get the money together to get a Mega Drive. I think it was 100. I still got it in the box. It was 100. It was 129.99. And I think the SNES was all like was like at least 200 quid. So it was
Yeah.
like that. It was like another almost like 70-80% markup on top of that. So it wasn't for years. I didn't get my first. Always a Game Boy. That's another thing.
Oh yeah.
I did have a Game Boy, but I didn't. But so you could always get like kind of a loose versions of all those NES classics on the Game Boy. But it wasn't till much later, till I was kind of sixth form going into uni, that I picked up an NES. Well after the fact, for dirt cheap secondhand.
But that was the time that I collected a lot of what I've got, because that was the perfect time. That was cheap before
Yeah.
you know, in the later 2000s things got stupidly expensive. Now I could never own half of what I own now. If I were to buy it today, it would be insane. You know,
As well,
but yeah, you're right.
absolutely.
Like sixth form kind of time, those early 2000s, so easy to get anything like that then. Late
Yeah,
90s,
yeah.
early 2000s, they were giving it away. Car boot sales, just like, yeah.
Well, you hear those funny stories, don't you? Like, people like, oh, I bought like, I remember going into Blockbuster or Game or whatever, and getting sealed copies of Earthbound for 50 cents or £1, and now they go for like 500-600 quid a pop, and you're
Yep.
like, if not more, like.
But
like
that's when you turn to emulators. That is
Yeah,
when you turn
yeah.
to emulators. That's, you know.
It's more about the act of collecting rather than playing the game at that point, isn't
Yep.
it? And like, when was it last year that was it a boxed sealed copy of Super Mario 64 went for $1.4 million?
One of the most common N64 games on the planet.
Yeah.
There must be more copies of that than almost any game. Like,
Yeah,
it's insane.
The attachment rate for that game, for that console, like, was probably about 50%. So pretty sure 1 in every 2 people that own an N64 had Super Mario
I
64.
think probably more than that.
It's like everyone.
I mean, it's like
Yeah, exactly.
GoldenEye, Mario Kart, Mario 64. Like, I think anyone I knew that owned an N64, and Ocarina, actually, yeah, that's fair. But yeah, it's just crazy, absolutely crazy.
But and then when you got, so you're right, and someone's weirdly, when that whole Nintendo PlayStation surfaced, and you know, the prototype, like 1 in 2, they reckon only 1 of 2 that ever existed, sold for like 400 grand, and I thought that's wild. And apparently I heard the stories that apparently before it got auctioned, someone offered him $1 million, and he turned it down thinking he was going to get a lot more via the auction, and it went up for like 400 grand. And that is a legitimate piece of video game history, you know, one in a lifetime chance to own a legitimate legendary prototype, and it goes for 400 grand. Yet a game that sold, as you said, in its millions goes for, and I'm highly suspicious a game 30-40-year-old game still shrink wrap. I'm so suspicious, mate.
I mean, it does happen. You get new old stock, you know, sitting in warehouses and whatnot. That's probably your only hope. But I mean, the odds of that are getting slimmer and slimmer.
Hence why its value, I suppose. But
well, the thing is, as well, they're just going to put it in a case, and it'll never see the light of day, and never get played, and never get used. And you know, I collect games to play, and it's fair. Yeah. You know, it's a fair thing. If you collect to look at your games, and you collect them just to, you know, if that brings you pleasure, more power to you. But for me, it's about playing games. I like playing games. You know,
exactly, mate. I completely agree with you. And the whole collecting scene, irrespective of what it is crazy, isn't it, at the moment? And I think we'll just never, because I think we'll never experience ever kind of a collector scene like it is now, because ultimately people, like, modern trends like Funkos or figures, whatever, people buy 3 or 4 of each one just so they can open one, keep 2. So that just means ultimately going forward that stuff's just going to be instantly devalued, because it's not a case that, as you said, the idea of getting an original Mario boxed with shrink wrap is super rare, because back in the day, kids would open
You
and rip
just
the
open 'em,
boxes,
yeah.
put the cartridges. Whereas nowadays, it's like, oh, look at this. Well, there's thousands in existence because people bought them
I picked
hopefully
up.
just to sell on.
Yeah, I mean, I won't spend the money for that kind of stuff. I picked up there was the MechWarrior 2 Battle Pack that came out in the 90s. It was one of the re-releases of MechWarrior 2, and it came with like Metneck and Ghost Bear's Legacy, I think, in a box. I've got it back there. That was sealed when it arrived, and it cost me. It was pretty cheap, so it wasn't like I paid sealed prices or anything. First thing I did as soon as it turned up was I opened it, because I was like, oh, I want to look at it. I didn't buy it just to look at the box. I want to get the manual out when I have a play with it. I want to,
Mate, do not blame me. I'd be exactly the same.
Yeah.
So records are the same as well. The amount of people that buy records and never even open them, and like, well, each, as you said, if that's
each to their own, for sure.
If that's your bag,
I think you and me are from the same kind of category.
Yeah. It's like, why artists spend like weeks or months thinking of an amazing gatefold design for it never to be seen because someone wants to steal it and put it on their shelves? Madness, mate. But as you said, that's each their own. But yeah, another story for another day, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. So the new transmissions, before we get on to something else I want to talk to you about, but the new transmissions, what are you going to be doing going forward with the new site?
More of the same, really. I said I have been a bit funny enough, it gave, as I said earlier on, with it being the old site being decommissioned, it gave me a chance to really look through some of our old content. And in those early years, we pumped out a lot of content, probably a couple articles each week, whereas nowadays I think with work and just general being an adult and being a dad, unfortunately the ability, and back then there was 3 or 4 of us working on it, and and we all had different interests. Some was more kind of film focused, some was more kind of Xbox focused, and you was simultaneously putting content, and initially when you launch a website, it's like, in the back of your mind, you do it for fun, but it's a bit like forming a band, isn't it? And then something will happen, you think, actually perhaps this could be something that I could do on a more professional capacity. And it led to kind of, there was one point in about 2011 where we were getting offered, nothing major, but little things like we got a few games to review from Xbox. And EA would send us a few physical discs.
Starting to get recognized as kind of press, at least, if nothing else.
Yeah, exactly. And it kind of hit a wall, and then we still carried on. And long story short, mate, I do it for the love of it. I do it for my love of writing. I do it for even if just one person reads and says, "Oh, I'd like to review, mate, I liked your article," then that's enough for me. I know it sounds cheesy.
I'm exactly the same, man.
Cliche,
but with the podcasts and stuff, we're just it's just really good fun, and it's nice to just get interaction from people and know. The thing is, see, you're the same as me. You're from the same era as me, right? It amazes me. People are kind of embarrassed that they've got like low views on a video or low listens on a podcast or something. I'm from the age where none of this existed. So to me, like 100 people watching or listening to a video or a podcast for me is amazing. Like the fact that I can get like, I don't know, like 12,000 people watching a video, it's like, that's mind-blowing, right? That's mind-blowing, because that would never happen when we were kids. Like growing up, you just showed it to your mates. It would have seen like the if I made a film back in the 90s, 6 people would have seen it because I would have showed it to my friends, and that would be it. Now, even if 10 people watch it, that's more than would have done when I was growing up. So it's still, it's great.
I completely agree with you, mate. And you mentioned it there, things like a net, when you made that, it's like the idea that the fact that you can actually make the technology that's available to people nowadays, you can make it on your phone if you need to.
We didn't even know what we were doing when we made that movie either. We were just like, we want to make a movie. We're going to make a movie. Okay.
And you can upload it online to Vimeo, whatever, YouTube, and someone on the other side of the planet could watch it immediately, mate. That, as you said, that blows my mind. And you raised a good point there and made me think about transmissions. When we, being a huge video game fan, and as we discussed, and being really into magazines, as a kid, I always wanted to write for a magazine because I thought that was my dream job. I get to play games and stuff,
and you get to write. Yeah,
exactly. And when we discovered sort of oh my God, you can actually put your content online quite easily. You don't have to, because the idea of running a website,
hosting your own content, which is like such a foreign concept to people nowadays. But you used to actually have to buy you actually had to get servers in house if you wanted to do videos on your website.
It's madness, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, kind of, like now, people wouldn't even dream of that, but
exactly. And it's kind of that idea of, well, we could write something and we could put it out there, and if only if one person reads it and says, "Oh, I really like your review," or really like your opinion on this, or even if they don't, just say, "I think you're completely wrong," that's equally as good. It just gets that totally. Interaction and so going forward, I want to get back more into reviewing stuff, and with February's been an awesome month for new games coming out. So my goal is to sort of play and digest Elden Ring as quickly as possible, and get my thoughts out there. Unfortunately,
I was going to say Chris will be jealous from the icons. He's currently building his PC, and I think like the primary reason he's building it is for Elden Ring. He's like slowly, bit by bit, as he can afford it, he's putting it together for Elden Ring.
I cannot wait. It's going to be amazing. So that will be, as I said, it's one of those things. All the big websites, the IGNs, the Eurogames, will be rushing to get their review first. I'm worried about that, mate. It's like when even if it takes me to June to get it up,
the problem is,
be there.
Yeah, and that's the problem when they've got this quota, and they're sponsored quite often by the companies making these games as well. There's always going to be some bias there, and there's also always going to be that pressure to review a game quickly. And with a game like Elden Ring, an open world game, an RPG, you could sink like 150 hours into a game before you complete it. And I think there's always that risk with these companies that they're not playing the game properly. They play 5 hours and they're like, that'll do, write a review. And it's not as well informed as someone like you who's going to spend the time to actually play the game properly, through to the end and really dissect it,
Yeah.
It's worth waiting for those reviews.
And it's mad to think that it is an open secret. They openly admit,
they're like,
we all play the first 50%, and to be fair though, I'm not necessarily justifying that approach, but unless it's a narrative-driven game, how many games you play where by the 10th hour, I'm really loving this. I love that you get understanding the mechanics, the art design, et cetera, et cetera. So you probably could get a fair indication of that.
You could get away with it sometimes, for sure.
Yeah, true,
there are some. I mean, I was playing, I said on the Icons a couple of months back now, I was playing Pathfinder Kingmaker, which again came out real cheap. I think it was free on Epic over Christmas, which is why I picked it up and started playing it. And I was loving it. It was really good fun. But then about 8 hours in, it becomes a completely different game. And unless you'd played that far, you'd never know. I mean, it's awesome, but it changes the game dramatically by like hour 7 to 10. It's like, oh my God, it's completely, you'd never get that experience.
I'd love the idea they put that in just to trick some reviewers out.
Maybe they did. No, it's an interesting game. You're kind of like a standard Pathfinder RPG style thing. You've got your party and you've got to take out you've got the stolen lands, I think they call it, and it's like a area of territory that's never been claimed by anyone, and the local rulers are like, if you can take back the land from this bandit king, then you can rule the land, right? And you kind of assume that's what I've got to do. I've got to take him out, and then the end of the game is that I become ruler of the land. But then I realized, I said to my fiance, I was like, I think I've nearly finished this game now. I'm about to take out this bandit king, the stag lord, I think they call him. I'm pretty done with this now. And then I took him out, and it was like, oh no, now you have to rule the land. Like, oh, well, I actually have to do that. I thought the game was going to end when I beat him, but no, it's like, okay, I actually continue questing, but also now rule this kingdom. So yeah, it's pretty fun.
That's quite cool, yeah.
Yeah. So, games that you're most excited for this year? I guess Elden Ring is that top of your list, or?
Yeah, mate. Elden Ring. In terms of the AAA big hitters, Elden Ring, and it's got to be God of War Ragnarok.
I still haven't played the last one, but it looks fantastic.
It's phenomenal, mate. It's a bit like in the way that the Doom 2016 reboot was, I would say, as reboots go, about as perfect as you're going to get. Something that takes the essence of the original, but basically puts it in a modern day framework that modern day players can accept. I thought it was phenomenal. Just the feel of it, it's almost like how you imagine playing Doom back in the day, like how you as a child,
in your brain,
in your brain,
They did kind of rip off Brutal Doom, which is a mod, but that's kind of by the by. In terms of a release, though, it is perfect, and I must admit, I actually think I prefer Doom Eternal now. I never thought they would beat that first Doom, but my God, I love Doom Eternal. It is so hard, but so much fun. I was literally about to say
it's brick hard, isn't it?
It's really hard, but again, you're an arcade gamer. Like I come from that time. I'm like, I will happily play a game that's way too hard. And just keep getting better at it. Once you figure out the gun combinations of that game and what takes down what enemy and what you need to use, it's constantly switching weapons in Doom Eternal. It's a very different experience, but it's great fun. But no, they did a great job.
You've hit the nail on the head there. It has definitely almost like a puzzle game element to it.
Yeah,
as you said,
which you don't expect going into a Doom game, but.
Click wheels, and you click wheel shotgun, click wheel plasma rifle, click wheel blah 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 blah. Yes, it was very, very good. I loved Eternal. I love the grappling hook. I love that kind of
cool.
the element that introduced. But I didn't love the platforming very much.
It's a lot of platforming. I will give you that.
It just felt out of place. It felt like something. I understand why you'd want to put it in to mix up the gameplay and the variety, but it did, for me, it didn't work. The amount of times we're just kind of missing the grappling points or missing the boost points, and it just felt like, for a game that is so frenetic and so fast paced and so brutal, it just felt like, come on, man, I just want to start keep shooting stuff. But I loved Eternal. I prefer the different. I think for me, the reason I love the reboot more, because it had that. There's a freshness to it that
so
kind of.
Fresh.
I think Eternal's obviously never, and a sequel's never going to be able to recapture that.
No.
But it's annoying. The thing annoys me is one thing the missing link in my gaming hardware is a gaming PC. I've never been up the space or the money to have a proper gaming rig.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really have a gaming PC. The only reason I've got away with it is because I built this PC for video editing, for film editing and stuff. So the spec is kind of high enough that I can get away with it. Like, I've got the graphics card, I've got the processor, I've got the RAM. Yeah. So, as a result, I can get away with it. It's not really a quote unquote gaming PC, but it does the job. Although these days it's starting to struggle.
That's I suppose that's
the nature of things.
My what's the RTX 390, whatever the high end one's, like 1,500 quid or whatever they are. It's absolutely wild. And I do love that old debate of like, the sort of PC master race thing. It's like, my PC's better than your PS5. Well, it should be for 5 times the price. If it wasn't, mate, I'd ask some serious questions.
I mean, they're all PCs anyway now. The debate's kind of over. They're all PCs. Yeah. And the thing that people always forget is that, the PS5 specs will be lower than a PC. Like, a console specs are generally going to be lower than a PC's, than a top PC spec anyway. But A, you'll pay more, and B, what they don't tend to think about is the fact that the console is, the PC is playing your games, and it's also doing loads and loads of other tasks. In the background is running the operating system is running everything else. A console is literally designed to only put all of its power into playing those games, right? So you get a lot more for lower spec because it's focused. It's focused on one thing.
Exactly, optimized to do that. I said that one task. You're absolutely right. Doom Eternal I loved. The reason I mentioned that was because the whole Bethesda, Microsoft buying Bethesda.
That's crazy.
I haven't got a Series X, so if they bought out Doom 3, that would be the reason. Because I don't have a gaming PC, would be the reason to jump on board the Series X.
I still don't. I still think it's worth too much to Microsoft to not release it for the PlayStation. Same with Skyrim, same with Starfield and Fallout. I do think they'll just delay it. It'll come out a year later or something, but I still think they'll release it. I'll be very surprised if they decide to not. Like, they've bought Activision now, they own Call of Duty. Are they really going to just say like, oh hey, we'll just forego all of the the PlayStation sales just to stick it to Sony? Is like, really?
I completely agree with you, mate. And part of you thinks like, it's a big flex in the fact that we've got all these studios and it's gonna. But all these companies have always said that they don't make the money on hardware. You know,
No.
what I mean, they really don't. It's the sales, isn't it? So the idea of like, all right, we'll have Call of Duty, we'll have Diablo, we'll have, the new id game, we'll have Doom, and I said Elder Scrolls, and people would probably, like me, would probably buy an Xbox Series X. But as you said, is that really where they're going to make the big bucks?
Yeah,
I don't think so. It's the like, especially like, look at something like Fortnite. Fortnite's a classic example, right? In 2018, it set the record for the most money ever grossed by a game within 1 year, $2.9 billion. And that game is free.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Exactly.
You can get for nothing. It's all skins and cosmetic items. So the money is really in the software. But it depends. At the end of the day, if you can spend 70 billion on an acquisition, are they really? It'd be interesting to see where the stance is. With obviously now with Sony buying Bungie, and they've openly come out and said we have no intention whatsoever of making this. Well, that's what they say now, exclusive.
Yeah.
Whether that's kind of them hoping to kind of put that
Olive
out
branch.
there and hoping, to Microsoft to say, look what we're doing. Do you want to put your $70 billion investment and have it on our platform as well? Be interesting to see, but I completely agree with you, mate. From a selfish perspective, for a person that just owns a PS5, I obviously want those machines in my console. But as I said, from a business decision, I think they'd be mad to not have likes of Call of Duty and Doom and Elder Scrolls and that on the PS5. But we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, before you go, we've got a little bit of time. I need to talk to you about, because of all the people I think I know in life, you are the biggest Star Wars fan. I think you are like the biggest Star Wars fan, and I love it because I'm not a huge Star Wars fan these days. Love the original trilogy. Wasn't a big fan of the prequels. Hated the sequels, and I've not really bothered since. But I love seeing how excited you get, and I keep seeing your posts on like Book of Boba Fett, and I'm like, oh, this is so cool, man. It's so cool seeing like people enthusiastic about something,
Yeah, true.
Even if it's something you don't like, it's like, I love that, and I just I just wanted to talk to you, like, sell me on The Mandalorian and Book of Boba Fett, because I don't even have a Disney Plus subscription, but I do have a free one. I can have a free one. My phone contract will give me a free one for a few months, so I'm tempted. But
Mate.
I gather the last couple of episodes have been pretty exciting. So
where do I start? Now, again, as we've hit on there, really. I'm a huge Star Wars fan, like many. But at the same time, I'm not a total mark either. I won't just gobble up.
No, you said similar things about Rise of Skywalker that I did. So
I'm not, mate. I'm not going to bore you with my thoughts on the sequel trilogy. For the whole, I thought they were dreadful. Yep. I thought, actually, I will.
Well, I stopped. I did. Last Jedi I thought was awful. Rise of Skywalker I thought was even worse, to the point that I've not watched anything Star Wars since. I'm just done. I'm just done now.
I can't. There's part of me that won't disagree with you. Force Awakens did what it had to do, didn't it? It got old fans interested again. Yeah. It got new fans up to date. Last Jedi, wow. I'll start by saying I didn't hate it. There's bits I didn't like about it. It's a beautiful looking film.
Oh, he's gorgeous looking. Absolutely.
There's some horrible bits in it. The treatment of Luke, but I didn't hate it. But what I did hate is the fact is, The Last Jedi tried to do something that that Star Wars have been reluctant to do for many, many years, and that is sever that idea that Star Wars has to be intrinsically linked to Luke Skywalker and the Skywalker lineage. Now, there's the thing they did in Last Jedi with that kind of idea that, the little boy with the broom at the end. It was kind of that idea that anyone could, a bit cheesy it may seem, but anyone could be a hero. Anyone that a Force, and it don't have to be Luke. Luke had died, so I finally thought, okay, well, I didn't necessarily like the direction it's taking. At least they're trying something a bit different that could now be a launch pad for the future of the Star Wars franchise, certainly in the cinema anyway.
Yeah.
So they had that, and then you get to Rise of Skywalker, and it was like, well, actually, a few people didn't like that, so we're just going to bring back Palpatine and Luke. Mate, it was like, so not only, so you basically threw Rian Johnson under the bus. Essentially, it's like if I was them, I would have doubled down on those themes and those ideas in Last Jedi, and that script that came out, the Colin, I can't pronounce his surname, Trevorrow, the guy that's supposed to lined up to direct it, and then they binned him off for Abrams. The idea that it was Ray was going to sort of gather together all these kind of force sensitive children, and
it sounds like
Finn,
a way more interesting story than Rise of Skywalker, doesn't it?
And Finn was going to basically remember that idea when Force Awakens, Finn was like a defecting stormtrooper. What a cool idea that was. I
loved that idea, and they went nowhere with it.
Exactly. Phasma again, what a joke. What happened?
She was amazing. And we spent that whole first movie, we were like, oh my god. That's the problem, is that the sequels to The Force Awakens have subsequently ruined The Force Awakens, because a lot of what made The Force Awakens potentially great was what it was setting up. But now that we've seen what it sets up, it's just awful. It's like the promise of that first film was actually, I thought, pretty good. I mean, it was a rehash. It had some really dumb moments, but it was setting things up.
And I think Last Jedi suffers even more from that. I think
God.
It was the idea. It took, it divided the fan base. Some people hated it. Some people loved it for whatever reason. And it was like, okay. And then you could have an exciting third film that really did lay the groundwork for where Star Wars was to go. No, we got some horrible bin fire that was just a mishmash of donkeys in space and Palpatine. That how lazy can you get? Where it's like, because I can remember, I'm not going to lie, when Ian McDermott came out at Celebration and he was like, and he was on the mate, I was like, this is amazing. But I really hope they explain how they bring Palpatine back. And who would have thought it couldn't have been any lazier than the crawl at the beginning? Palpatine's back.
He's
like,
back. Here he is.
Is literally that it? And you're like, mate, it was lame. And the idea of creating hundreds of Star Destroyers that are manned by millions of troops that somehow have a defect in them, that they can't use their weapons or
fly up
their system or fly up unless they're like, that's like designing a warship that can't use its
and why were they all under the
ice?
They were like under the ice, and then you've got that like nebula that they can't get through, but then they do wide shots and you can see you could just go around it. Like, it's just like, what are you doing? This is like directorial, directing 101.
And the more I think about it, the more angry I get. And
I quit halfway through, and I posted on Facebook that I was like, I've got halfway through, I'm done. And it was people on bloody social media that were like, no, it gets better in the second half. I'm like, oh, okay. It did not get better in the second half. That was a lie.
I was listening to a podcast where one of the members on there was stating that not only is it their favourite Star Wars film, but it was their favourite film of all time. I was
wow. I mean, each to their own, but wow. What films have you watched? I have to question at that point.
Well, this is it, isn't it? It's like the people that say the Titanic's the worst movie ever made. It's like, come on.
It's really
the production value alone puts it,
it's
way
the worst.
Beyond.
It's probably, I mean, even Raise the Titanic. It's probably one of the worst Titanic movies ever made. but it is one of it is an amazing film.
Yeah.
I mean, when you look at it, it's amazing. I think it's just an insult to people who actually had families on the Titanic. That's the biggest problem with it.
Yeah, true. But anyway, so back to Star Wars. So that's the sequels. I said we could spend another 2 hours talking about that, but we won't.
Well, maybe we will one day.
So that's all. Yeah, mate.
We can always do this again.
Happy to come back. But so that same as you, mate. I was like this. I haven't seen Rise of Skywalker, so seen it at cinema, and that says a lot. And even the prequels, mate, I've seen dozens and dozens of times.
I've seen. I mean, I don't even like the prequels. I've definitely seen them at least twice.
There's a lot. There's a lot. To be honest, I think there's a lot of revisionism that's gone on with people's approach to prequels. I was like a lot of people when they came out. I was like, oh, this is rubbish. I don't like this. But as it's gone on, I was like, at least there's characters I like. At least there's sequences I like.
At least they were fun.
And at least
that's one thing you can say about them. Like those sequels were just dour. It's like
no, almost zero redeeming features. Even something like the lightsaber battle in Last Jedi. There's bits in that where there's bits where clearly they're aiming and then they realize they're going to hit the stunt double and they're moving their blades. So it's just
and they all wait around as well. And you see some shots where they're just stood in the background doing nothing, and it's like,
and you're like, come on, man. So that's the bad.
And then they do these TV shows, right?
Phenomenal, mate. I just think for everything that's wrong with the sequel trilogy, made by committee, by people that are clearly just getting a paycheck, The Mandalorian feels like it's made by people that genuinely get what what made people fall in love with it in the first place.
That's awesome.
The Mandalorian for me, cool character. One thing was about Star Wars, it was always, to me, it was always cool.
Oh
Star
yeah.
Wars was, I love Star Trek, but the movies you would never accuse of being cool necessarily, would you? You know what I mean? So Star Wars was always cool. Mandalorian, he's that gunslinger. It's just kind of it drills into everything. The Mandalorian lore, and oh mate, and Favreau and Filoni are a dream pairing for me. You've got someone like Filoni who gets it, gets the lore, gets he's the protege to Lucas, gets it, and then got someone like Favreau who's just a really, really good filmmaker, or in this case a TV show. He knows what people want, and they literally seem to do it with and also, but the nods, unlike say something like some of the DC films where the sort of nods and things like that are a bit ham-fisted. It's like everything, it feels so organic, and just everything. Just for me, I just think it's wonderful, like so nerdy as well. Some of the nods they got are so deep. Like in the first season of Mandalorian, when he comes in and to get his payment in Beskar, he's in this container, which in real life is an ice cream container apparently,
right?
But that was seen in Empire Strikes Back on Cloud City by like some obscure character like Woodrow Hood, is it, running around.
But that shows, like, that shows they've really watched these shows, or at least they've consulted with people who have really watched these films, and that's cool.
And they know full well, people will instantly go, oh, that's from Empire Strikes Back, or that's from the Holiday Special. And like the things like that, his gun is like a complete replica of Boba Fett's rifle from the Holiday Special, and all this sort of stuff. And it's just wonderful. And the end of, for people that haven't seen it, I'm pretty sure, the events of the end of season 2 of Mandalorian, I won't go into too much.
Oh, well, even I've seen that clip, and I've not watched the show at all.
We're worried about spoilers, we're worried about spoilers then. So obviously Luke turns up at the end of that, and mate, it made me feel like a child again. I was just like, the way they shot it.
It looked great. I mean, it's difficult. I've just got this brain that just won't let things go, So like I saw that clip on YouTube and I was like, oh my God, that's really awesome. And then immediately my brain's like, but in a couple of years he's going to be drinking green tip milk from a fucking alien on some shit planet looking like a homeless guy. And I can't help it. And then I'm like, oh, I want to, like, it's like, I want to, but at the same time, I'm like, I know how this ends. It's like, you've given me the end of the story and the end's awful. And now I've got now you're making cool things in the middle. And
inherently, that's the problem, is that they've backed themselves into a corner now. I said on Facebook,
I think they're going to stay here forever. That's my theory, is that they're going to stay in this period of time forever and just never go that far. So they could just stay here.
And hope you forget about the sequel trilogy. Yeah, I think you're right. Like, I said a rant on Facebook the other day. I was thinking, just imagine that at this point in time, we didn't have the sequel trilogy.
Yeah.
And the only content we had was, we haven't mentioned them yet, but I love Rogue One, I love Solo. I really enjoyed those spin-off movies.
I enjoyed Rogue One for the most part. Solo was like harmless, I thought. Harmless,
it's fun. For something that, they took a gamble with that. At the end of the day, like, Solo is one of the most beloved characters of all time, and then to announce it without Harrison, realistically Harrison Ford was going to be in it, but with him not being in, I thought he did a pretty good job. And it was a tick box exercise of,
it was
ding,
a bit.
How I get the Falcon, ding, how I met Lando, ding, Kessel Run, ding, all this sort of stuff. But so it was literally a tick box exercise, but it worked. I thought the casting was great. But you're absolutely right, mate, and I completely agree. For how much I get excited about the stuff they've introduced in this season of Boba Fett, where it ends. Luke crying himself to death on a rock, which is just lame. But I digress slightly. But I just think the idea of, imagine we didn't have those movies and they were setting up the idea now something went bam, post Boba Fett or Mandalorian. It's like, we're gonna have episode 7, and it's going to be what everyone thought it was going to be, seeing Luke at the peak of his powers.
That's the thing now, because they got the deep fake thing working. They could totally do it now as well,
mate. And without going into spoilers, but even the progress they've made from season 1 of Mandalorian with that technology is like night and day. So
well, that stuff's getting better every day, isn't it? That
I could totally get on board with a show about Luke teaching Grogu, and even Ben Solo. So the idea of seeing, these events that we never got to see in the movies, in the TV format, mate, would blow my mind. I would absolutely love it. But as you know full well, they unavoidable that the fact that they know they've backed themselves into a corner, and ultimately it's going to result in Luke living in a shed with some
Yeah, with some
penguins
penguin.
and
Yeah,
drinking. He said drinking,
which is
blue
a shame.
pit milk.
But it sounds like these shows are kind of hitting the nail on the head for the most part, though. I'm hearing really good things, so it's kind of tempting. It gets tempting, I get
definitely
tempted.
Mandalorian, mate. Boba Fett has been a bit more controversial. I personally love it, but I can understand the criticisms. Criticisms towards the pacing, criticisms towards the fact the last two episodes Boba Fett hasn't been in it, so it's kind of like you call the show Boba Fett, yet you don't put the main character in. Problematic.
Yeah,
is problematic. You know what I mean? And
I get the impression they wanted to just do another season of Mandalorian, but Pedro Pascal was probably busy, so they were like, "Oh, fuck it, we'll just call it Boba Fett." And then Pedro could be in the episodes he can be in, and then we can continue on from there or something. But
true. I have faith in Favreau and Filoni, so I ultimately think that they're gonna come good, and I think the last episode hopefully will tie all together. But some of the pacing issues and the way there's multiple timelines going on, and the way they've kind of integrated those fractured timelines, I can see some of the criticisms. But mate, I'm as the rant I've had a lot of friends. At the end of the day, you've seen Rise of Skywalker, right?
Oh yeah, it can't get worse.
If that's the alternative, I will take slight
100%.
pacing issues in a TV show any day over the bin fire that is Rise of Skywalker. But yeah, so mate, so we got that, and we got Kenobi to look forward to, mate. And I can't.
Kenobi might win me over, because I think Ewan McGregor, as much as I am not a fan of the prequels, I do think Ewan McGregor was fantastic as Obi-Wan. So I'm down with that.
Yeah, and before we go, I think Kenobi is the big one. I think Kenobi is the one where they can really do more damage than good. Mandalorian ultimately had nothing to lose. It was for the most part a new character that had, from a race of people that for most viewers wouldn't know what Mandalore is or what.
I only know from like the Clone Wars TV show and some Rebels, Rebels, and that's about it. That's about all I know. So
they had kind of not too much to lose, but Kenobi, everyone knows who that is.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. And the idea of the fact they're bringing Hayden back as Vader, mate, I am so pumped. So, but it's got to be right. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
But then again, Ewan McGregor it's quite funny how he's changed his tune when the big bucks come.
They all do. Harrison Ford was like, "Fuck Star Wars. I'm not interested in Star Wars." Mate, and then it's like, have this big wad of cash. Like, oh yeah, I love Star Wars. It's great.
Ewan McGregor is just as bad. Like I remember saying, "Oh, being a classical actor or whatever is like training in front of a green tennis ball. CGI is pathetic. Blah blah blah. What was that? You want to pay me X million pounds to reprise my most famous role? Okay, here we go, and let's have it." And he's done nothing but talk it up on social media. So, but then again, it makes me wonder. It's like, he didn't have to do it, and especially with Hayden as well, mate. The fact that Hayden's coming back, mate. It's like he was like, I feel like along with Ahmed Best, who played Jar Jar, man, I felt sorry for those guys. They did the best what they were given, and they got burnt alive.
A lot of the problems with those prequels, especially when you watch
the pun intended.
Yeah. The problem with those prequels a lot of the time was the script and the dialogue they were saying. It's like no actor's going to pull off some of that dialogue. The dialogue was terrible. So I don't think it's necessarily all Hayden's fault, because I've seen him. I saw him in a few other things. I thought he was fine.
Yeah, but I think he felt so burnt by that experience that he kind of backed away from acting. Yeah, because he was in that even we played a journalist, something Glass, wasn't it? He was supposed to be very good in that. And what was the sci-fi film? Was it Looper? Was it Looper?
No, not Looper. He's in the movie when they can teleport around the planet.
Yeah, what was that called? Push or I can't remember what it was called.
I can't remember what it was called, but yeah.
But then he obviously just lost his love for it after basically just being vilified by everyone for, I don't like sand and blah blah blah, and it's like
which he didn't write.
Yeah, and it's a shame. I hope this gives him a chance to really kind of get his mojo back and give him redemption as an actor and as the character. Because I thought, as you said, Vader is, let's be fair, like one of the greatest villains ever. If not the greatest cinematic villain ever. So I want to see more of that. So fingers crossed, it comes out soon and we can
enjoy it.
Yeah, enjoy it, mate. Yeah. So,
well, no, it's really nice. It's nice to see someone passionate about Star Wars and things. I remember being passionate about Star Wars. Maybe I will be again with a Disney
get
Plus.
Involved, mate.
Well, I've got a free Disney Plus subscription, so I might give it a go sometime soon. It's kind of I got it with the my phone contract when that got renewed, so I just haven't activated it. But maybe I will.
no excuse then, mate. Get
Not
involved.
really. No, there's no excuse other than
No.
time, which is
Yeah,
something of a
true,
factor,
mate.
But
the beauty of these shows are only like 20, 30, 35 minutes a pop.
oh,
so,
really? Oh, okay. Well, that's
yeah, and I think there's like what six I don't know, maybe 6, 8 episodes each season, so there really aren't that much of a commitment. It's not like trying to rewatch X-Files again. Or
I
anything
did
like
that.
that.
I did that during the pandemic. I rewatched.
Yeah, me too, mate. It's amazing, but you forget it's like 225
it's a lot of episodes.
Yeah. Long gone the days of 24 episodes per season and 45 minutes ago. That truly was an investment, wasn't it?
It really was.
Your time. Yeah,
it really was.
Yeah.
Cool, man. Well, we will put links to obviously transmissions and whatnot in the description. But is there anything you want to plug? Obviously, the website.
Not so much, mate. But yeah, transmissions. Yeah, check it out. As I said, it's kind of transmission 2.0. Transmissions from thevoid.com. Check it out. We're on all the social media and YouTube. And said regards to the records, there's a page dedicated to that on transmissions, but mainly Instagram. So if that floats your boat, go and check them out. Any feedback's welcome. So all very available through transmissions from thevoid.com.
Excellent. Well, thanks for coming on, man.
No worries, man. Hopefully I can come back and we can.
Oh, for sure. We'll do this. We'll
Star Wars, modern Star Wars.
I don't want to shred I want Star Wars to be good again. That's the thing. Like I want to be the films. We certainly can. I could spend a lot of time slagging off the films, but I hear good things about the series, so I'm thinking about maybe I'll dip my toe into the Mandalorian or something and give that a go.
Cool.
But thank you, James, and we'll catch you again soon.
Yeah. Take care, man. Thanks very much.
Thanks for listening, everybody. Bye-bye.